Now, my question that I pose to you guys is, do you think that a $60 game should be longer than a 5-hour experience? Do you think that that is even a valid factor nowadays when,
No. Yeah, that is a huge factor because there are so many indie games that, they sell for $2 a pop, $5 a pop. That one Avant game that I made Marco play that he hated with all the dubstep, that was like a $1 game, but it was really pretty. It was very detailed. It had great production and a bunch of unlocks, but you could literally beat that game in like 5-10 minutes.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, a lot of, because I mean, this has been the buzz around game journalism for the past week, but a lot of people are saying, well, what about a game, what about these old 2D classic games that you could beat in one sitting? Like DuckTales, you can beat in one sitting if you really wanted to.
I mean, that game came out 20 years ago.
That game cost $15.
Right, if you want to do
Not
that
when
again.
it first came out.
How much did it cost when it first came out? Not $60.
It was like $70.
I don't think it's
What?
Oh, what?
Old, like NES games and stuff like that, used to be $60, $70.
Well, they didn't know any better then. Like originally when it first came out, gaming was still new. They didn't know that things like this aren't supposed to last a whole day or just a day.
I think, well, yeah, because a lot of those games you couldn't even save them, so you had to try to beat it in one
Right.
sitting.
Right. And that's the thing. It has that replayability because you keep getting pushed back.
Right. But now, I mean, this is the 21st century. There's no reason they should be comparing it to old, games that came out 2 decades ago and saying, well, what about this? Nobody
Right.
was complaining then. It's like, well, yeah, of course not.
That's them.
I'm paying $65 for a game. I got a busy life, and I want to fill some of that life with a lot of gameplay.
It's funny that you say that though, because that exact argument has been used to defend shorter games. Because nowadays, I mean, it's come out in I think it was off of Steam that they've seen the progress of people and been able to track that amount of completion for single player story driven experiences.
Yeah.
And the vast majority are never beaten.
I think Steam though is a bad pool to take from.
No.
Because how many games do you have?
A lot.
Exactly. So if they're looking at, maybe if they're looking at all AAA titles, something like that. But if they're looking at their entire community of games and comparing that, then there's going to be a lot of games that are not played.
You both have compelling arguments. I can see how Adam's side holds up because if you're buying a game, you buy it to play it. But then at the same time, Steam sales and all these other sales, they're just throwing games out.
Right.
You're getting games for pennies on the dollar.
Right.
I think it's skewing the
Numbers?
Yeah.
It is because I guarantee you I wouldn't have half of the uncompleted games that I have if they weren't so cheap.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I have to look at the data again, but I think this was specifically for story-driven single-player experiences. So, I mean, we'd have to look at that. But, yeah, I get that complaint and I get that argument, but I don't know. I'm kind of hesitant to...
Intern? I need a...
Refill, please. Thank you.
Please. Should we just tap the glass?
Oh, yeah, that's what...
Get nothing.
Thank you, sir.
Anyway, thank you, Gavin.
His name's Intern, not Gavin.
I'm sorry. Come on. What is that?
Look at me.
All right.
That's about a
Fucking host.
Pinky?
You little kiss up.
Whatever.
Anyway,
sorry. So I was saying I'm kind of hesitant to make such a big deal about the length of game, whereas there's a more important factor at hand, which is the enjoyability of the game. If I play a self-contained, 5 to 6 hour experience, and I love every hour of that.
Oh, we know you love self-contained games where you don't have to play with anybody.
Listen, that's enough. All right? There's nothing wrong with that. Anyway.
we're going to have a roast in a little bit.
All right. So I think that I would much rather have, a 5 hour to 6 hour game that's really fun and I enjoy all of that than having a 12-hour game where half of it is just padding and garbage and
Bullshit.
yeah.
No. I'm calling bullshit.
No, I'm not accepting that.
Persona.
That's not padding. That's all leveling up. That's an RPG where everything you do
Have you beat
has a factor.
Persona yet?
No, I actually tried to play it again and beat the last boss.
Are you
and
having fun with it, Adam?
The same thing happened to me.
It doesn't sound like you're having fun with that game, and you've been playing it for years.
Well, I'm at the
Struggle.
no, I'm at the very, very end of it, and I can't beat that boss because he cheats. The game's cheating.
I for one like really long games because
maybe you should play Persona.
let's not get
Also
crazy.
calling
Let's
bullshit
not
on
get
Mark.
crazy. I like to sit on a game for a while.
Oh yeah,
And play it for 2 days and then let it
Destiny or Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yeah, those are both terrible examples. Because I
Grand
beat
Theft Auto 5
Destiny
is
and
a-
I beat Grand Theft Auto 5.
You didn't beat Destiny.
Yeah, I did actually.
Hmm.
Eh,
go. You beat Assassin's Creed?
You just started the
yeah,
game.
no,
Black
Black
Flag?
Flag. No,
Nope.
I didn't beat that.
Remember, Adam, he just likes sitting on them, not playing them.
That game is just really fun to play. Period. Just, I mean, and
So never getting that back is what you're saying.
probably not.
Okay.
The game has a lot to do in it that prevents you from continuing the story, which I like. I like having stuff like that. I do the side missions contrary to popular belief. I enjoy having longer games to play because I do put them down for a while, then pick them back up. But if I knock it out, like Infamous, for instance, I beat that in a day.
Second
And-
Son.
It's ridiculous.
Second Son, yeah. I beat that in a day, turned it back in, got my money back. But it was a very unfulfilling experience for me.
Like a boss.
Like a fucking yeah, it was a very unfulfilling experience for me. The game was fun. I was having a lot of fun, and then I get to the final boss, and I'm like, "That's it? It's over?"
Yeah.
And and the side missions weren't enjoyable enough to make it so that short experience was worth it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, the side missions
sure.
weren't they just like find this guy, spray paint this building?
Yeah.
Do this
guy.
and then wait for a bunch of people to come after you and then tear them apart because once you get the all the abilities, you're OP in that game. You beat the shit out of everybody.
Yeah.
So it really takes away from the experience.
Yeah, and we talked about Infamous before.
Right, yeah,
obviously,
we don't
but-
have to go into that. I'm just saying as an example
Yeah.
of a
Yeah,
short game,
I hear
which
you.
is why I don't like them.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VII. You know, people say it's one of the best of all time. I'm in that
Group.
community of people.
Okay.
It's a 3-disc game, and it has a lot to do with the fact that it's a PlayStation 1 game and there's a lot of content.
You can fit
But-
that on a cell phone now, Marco.
Right.
You realize
But
that.
at the time, that game took forever to beat.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
It's proportionally, that's a long ass game.
Right.
Because one disc was still like an 8 and 9 hour game. But yeah, it's ridiculous how
Yeah.
long that game was.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like growing up, we have less and less time to dedicate to games. So
Yeah.
if I can fit a game in, over a weekend marathoning, I'm kind of okay with that. Like, I don't necessarily want. Okay, I'm not going to say what I was going to say.
Which is...
Like, I was going to say I don't want like another Fallout experience, but I feel like
You loved Fallout though.
I do, and I really I take that back. That's why I didn't really want to say it. But I would take
Single
less.
player game.
I would take less Fallouts and more. I don't know, more games of the length of maybe like an Uncharted, where it's like a cinematic experience. It says everything it needs to. And it's
No.
not necessarily a long, 10+ hour game.
I have no qualms with either of those types of games. Just as long as they don't release too close to each other.
Yeah.
And what you're saying before, the enjoyability factor of the game has a lot to do with it too. I mean, if the infamous story basically was like Last of Us, for instance, we were just talking about it off camera. It's about a 10-hour game.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
But
Sure.
I mean, obviously, we've talked about it before. I said
You know how long this guy thought it was?
What?
I was just throwing a number out there,
He
but
thought
it was
almost
pretty,
a work week.
I said 30 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many corners are you looking for?
Okay.
Stopped at about 18 and a half.
Oh no, man.
Jesus Christ. Are you using a magnifying glass?
I'm just saying, I threw a random number out there. So it's not a 30-hour game. It's about a 10-hour game.
Yup.
I believe that is a short length for a game, but the experience made it feel longer. And that's what you need. You need a game that is going to draw you into it and kind of make its length kind of stretch due to how much fun you're having.
Right.
I guess that's contrary to the age-old saying, but...
It has, I think we're hitting the nail on the head here, and it has a lot to do with the type of game it is. Because, a game of Tetris you get done in a few minutes.
Right.
But it's still a great game. Doesn't make it a bad game.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
But
So then it has a lot to do with what they want, what the developers want that game to be versus what it actually is.
right.
Because
Right.
if they're advertising it as, if they're advertising The Order, for instance, as the next Last of Us, as far as how much you're going to enjoy the game, and it's 6 hours and it feels like 6 hours, then
Yeah.
it failed at what it was trying to be.
Correct. And I mean, it goes the other way too, because I know a lot of people disagree with the opinion of the IGN editor that reviewed Alien Isolation, in saying that it's not a great game. But I understand his point, and I think it's a valid one, in that the game was too long. The type of game it is doesn't warrant that long of a game.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense.
So, I mean, like a lot of these intense horror games tend to be shorter because that's all that's enjoyable as a gamer.
Yeah.
That experience, if you're
As
watching
a pussy.
yeah, okay. As if you're watching a horror movie and it's really intense, it's only 2 hours. And you're out of it by that point. Whereas this game's 6 to 8 hours in that world. Like, it's just, I mean, you can chop it up obviously, but a lot of times you'll play through a game up to 5 hours and go, I've had enough.
Yeah.
But I mean, once, like Alien Isolation, for instance, they said, like, once you're in it for, 2 or 3 hours, like, it's the same experience over and over again. And it doesn't, like you said, lend itself to its length. But if it did, if the gameplay was good enough, innovative enough, then that game length, you wouldn't feel it. Again,
Right.
like, it would... 8 hours in that world, if you're immersed in that world, that's a scary experience. Think
Yeah.
about being stuck on a ship with an alien for 8 hours.
It's exhausting.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
So-
yeah,
You
look at
don't
it.
play games to be exhausted.
that's true.
Yeah.
It shouldn't become, a
chore.
work. Yeah, a chore. Nobody goes into a game and goes, let's make this game horrible.
Right.
Make this work.
So, yeah, I mean, it's like you were saying, it's what the developer wants it to be compared to what it actually is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as far as The Order goes, I guess we'll have to wait until we finish it or Gav finishes. We get an official
Yeah.
review of it in
itself.
Don't interrupt me, boy.
You're right. I'm sorry.
Of it in its entirety.
There it is. Them's the words.
So, all in all, game length, it depends.
Yeah.
Size matters.
I think we can all agree that we're okay with short games, short games and long games. It all just depends on the enjoyability of the game.
I like
think
a
that's all I
nice
was trying to get to.
girthy game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Anyway.
What about you, Adam? You
I like all kinds, man.
You like them?
Yeah.
You like long games?
Short games.
Short, stubby games?
All kinds of games.
What's the length of a chode game?
What?
How long's that? In hours.
I thought we were being clever.
Nah.
And then this guy just comes in.
Lowbrow humor. That's what you get with a One Baron podcast. Am I right, intern?
You
That's
got
right.
it.
That's
There
right.
it is.
All right. All right. All right. Anyway, moving on.